Attending this CppCon, you will be at a level which you haven't experienced and which you haven't ever have thought of. You'll come to learn about many things which haven't been exposed to you before. So I'm sure you would love to be here, and once you experience this, you'll be like, I want to come next time, and you'll not miss this again.
Hey, everybody. My name is Sherry Sontag. I'm with Bloomberg, but the people you have on stage, you can see the names there, are from 4 different companies. And about a year ago, we had this idea for talking about people who chose to be independent contributors, individual contributors and not managers. The idea that you'd go off the career path, off-road. And we started that conversation with our managers because it really doesn't work unless you have someone kind of advocating for you. The more this expanded, the more we talked to different people, and this panel has had different iterations, and this is the first multi-company iteration, the more we realized we are all really passionate about what we do. It's not a conversation about management or independent. It is a conversation about people who value collaboration and colleagues more than they value hierarchy. And yesterday, when we were talking, somebody pointed out that it's not just that we're off-road. Maybe we're just all a little weird, but it works. So I guess the subtext of this talk, as I start to introduce people or let them introduce themselves, is it's not easy being green, but sometimes it's really rewarding. So we are in different places. We are finding that this matters about who you work with more than where you work, and that there is freedom to be different. And there's some ambiguity and responsibility and a little bit of fear involved too. So would you like to start, Enrique?
Hello, my name is Enrique. I'm a software engineer at Optiver. I am currently a people manager, but throughout my career, I've moved back and forth between IC and people management roles. And I am passionate about enabling people to become the best version of themselves.
I'm John Farrier. I'm the founder and CEO of Polyrhythm. And I'm here because I really want to help people learn how to manage their own careers.
Hi, I'm Callum. I've been at Bloomberg for 7 years now. Prior to that, I had a long career working as a freelancer, contractor, working at a number of different companies. I've always been an IC, and I enjoy that side of things. So yeah, I'm just going to give my perspective on that.
I'm John Paven. I recently became a manager after about 2 decades as an individual contributor.
Hi, I'm Tom. I've been a team lead of 5 or 6 different teams across 3 different companies in the last 10 years or so. Been writing code since I was 8. Been getting paid to write codes for about 25 years now.
Hi, I'm Lara, and I currently work at Bloomberg and I've been with Bloomberg since about 2011, I think. I'm an individual contributor and pretty much always have been. Before Bloomberg, I kind of worked in web startup when that was a thing, business intelligence, and various different sizes of companies. So I've kind of seen kind of a lot of environments. The closest I've ever been to management was like a principal software engineer, but now I'm kind of happy again as a senior software engineer at Bloomberg.
Enrique, I think I asked you what your elevator pitch would be, and you came up with a really interesting combination of from tech to human stuff. Do you want to say what you think of as your role beyond?
I think it's solving problems. Sometimes it involves writing software, but if I can avoid that, then that's ideal. Yeah, working with people to.
You said
to help them grow.
It's like the people puzzle too, right?
Yes, sorting out what people need at different points in their careers and helping them balance what we need to deliver and how they need to be stretched.
Well, That was also a point that you made, John, that you realized you started programming when you just had to know how to program to be brilliant. And then you found a Herb Sutter seminar and realized that, you were brilliant to the people whose niche you were filling. But if you really wanted to build something, you had to break free of the niche, right? You had to do something different.
Yeah, I think it was get out of your bubble, right? And so that was actually a precursor to this conference, C++ and beyond. And it was the first time I really got out and figured out that I didn't know anything. And that kind of sparked this thing where I need to start managing my own career because my management isn't going to do it for me. I need to figure out where I need to go, what I need to do to get there and advocate for myself and start building all those skills in addition to software engineering skills. That they were just as important as learning the latest, bits of the language, learning how to manage your career and work with your leadership and learning how to manage subordinates was all a part of this gig. It wasn't just, compiler flags and things. So.
Now, I'm going to jump a little bit, Tom, just because you made a point when we were talking yesterday about how you actively look for people who don't fit the mold, who may not fit the org chart exactly.
Yeah, that's. I find that you should screen for weirdness when hiring, and for me, that's proved itself. It's proved its value. I think the people who end up going off-road for whatever reason, they bring something special to the team. And they usually are there. They know what they want, and they know they have opinions, and they're passionate, and they won't let you get away with just doing things because that's how we've always done it. And that is incredibly valuable to a team, I think.
Ironic, kind of, because in interview, kind of try desperately hard to mask that weirdness while working out if the organization that you're going to join will kind of have a place for your weirdness. So,
well, wait, Lara, you work for someone though. I love Lara's boss. His name is Marek, and Marek was a young TL. And Lara saw that this team was being formed. And Marek had to learn that not everybody was like Lara, who was going to really just have all these ideas and just need the freedom to breathe into them. That's what he thought managing was. How has he been able to, stand up for you, make it so that you have the ability to be that creative?
I have no idea how he does it, but he seems to mind. Marek's great. I guess when I talk to Marek, I'm pretty honest with my thoughts, what I'm happy with, what I'm not happy with, I try and work out how to align what I want to do with what's kind of good for the team, and work out kind of what the common directions are. Try and kind of sort out. Try to just understand any kind of mismatches in expectations. I think that's kind of key. But that's not. That's not special to kind of any particular team lead, team member relationship.
Just building on what Lara said, I think here's a career pro tip. If you want to make your managers' lives easier, be honest with them. Tell them what you think. I'm saying that as a manager. It's always easier when a team member just comes out and says, how they feel or what they think, and you can have that conversation.
Does it work other way?
Go to the mic and ask the question.
And I just wanted to kind of say, while you're getting to the mic, you should want your manager's life to be easier, because that's better for your career too.
Sorry for interrupting you. So you've been on both sides. Is this recommendation symmetric?
I think when there is a power imbalance, the responsibility always lies with the person with more power, right? That's just how life should work. So the short answer is no.
Any, I know there are no silver bullets, but any specific recommendations where you should be close your mouth as a manager?
As a manager?
Or even higher?
I don't necessarily think you should close your mouth. I don't necessarily think there's something you should not say. I think you need to be very purposeful in how you say it. So anything that I say, I would need to think, why am I telling this person this thing at this time? What goal am I hoping to accomplish?
So I was just going to say that when you are providing feedback, especially if it isn't especially positive, it's very important to phrase it in a constructive way. Basically because people's feelings matter. And if you are able to phrase things in a constructive way, then people almost always improve. Where if you are more aggressive, then people tend to resist the aggression more than actually take the advice. So it's very important how you phrase things, not just what you say.
So I just wanted to say that, sometimes you'll have like a point of disagreement with maybe the direction that you should take something with your manager, and you feel that you should do different things. I think it's important to kind of like understand each other's positions and the different constraints. And maybe the difference is that the evaluation of what's more important is what's different. I think you should, once you've reached that understanding, you kind of like, even if you disagree on what the direction should be, at a certain point you need to kind of agree on going in a common direction. And sometimes an opportunity later will come and say, hey, we made that decision and I wasn't really comfortable. These other things have come up. Do you want to revisit it? And you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be continuously kind of bringing up like, this is bad. I've always been saying it's bad. It's kind of like look for the opportunity where there's actually a reasonable place to make a different move. Don't kind of like keep bringing stuff up because that's not constructive. You've got to kind of move together.
Yeah, I agree. So
I need to ask you guys a quick question, by the way. How many of you are managers? Okay, and how many? And the rest of you are ICs? All right, that's important to know that. Individual contributor. The reason I ask is I want to make sure that if we had a room full of one or the other, we would have kind of a different conversation. But the act of providing cover, freedom, but also being given the ability to have someone to fight for and something to fight for and communicating what you're doing so your manager could get you the cover and freedom. That's a dance that goes on. And I just want to make sure I'm talking to all of you. Enrique had the mic for a reason. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Yes, I want to be a lot more emphatic than my colleagues. I think the kindest thing you can do with someone is give them any feedback you have for them. You don't want them to ever be surprised by things. But keeping in mind what Tom said, that just applies to any relationship in life. You need to understand how to communicate things.
Yeah, it's clear. I like the idea, I'm using this idea. You want the person to do something, so figure out what to say so that they do what you want, right?
No, that doesn't work. If you're pushing a button to get the response that you want, then you're pushing a button and you're programming, and you can't program people. What you have to do is when I am doing any kind of outreach, which is we're on an outreach team, I have to ask uncomfortable questions about what people need of me and risk hearing what I don't want to hear. So I at least really have a clear idea of where someone's coming from. And then I could work out how do I fit into that. But you can't say the right thing to get the right response because nobody walks away from that believing a word that's been discussed. I mean, do you disagree with me?
I think when I said the communication should be purposeful, it's not about what that person would do when they walk out the door immediately. So my purpose can be, I want this person to grow into a different role, or I want this person to address certain things that I observed in their behavior. or I want the team to, to change the team's dynamic. So I gotta have that purpose in mind. And it's not necessarily like a specific task, because that's, I think, relatively easy. It's more about like what long-term goal am I trying to accomplish by having this conversation with this person right now? And then, like, of course, all of these things that were mentioned here, right? The empathy, the kindness, so on. That, to me, that kind of immediately derives from that.
Is it more important because you seek out people who are a little bit different to be able to have that communication going?
I'll say, as like a blanket cover statement, I think you'll get different advice from different people up here. And there's not one right answer, or just some advice might resonate with you more than others. I think I would answer this question a little bit differently. But it's to be emphasize accuracy in the feedback over kindness. And that means it's more important to get in sync with expectations and what reality is versus spending a lot of time trying to sugarcoat something. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But the kindest thing you can do is to give people feedback, in my opinion, early and often, and accept that feedback early and often, and to get in sync on things. I may think that an employee isn't performing at the right level for whatever reason. And I need to talk to them about that as soon as I see that, and then make sure that my observations are accurate and that my understanding of the situation is accurate. And they need to be open and to say, well, the reason that came up or we're not hitting that deadline is because of X, Y, and Z. And oh, thank you. I didn't know that. Now we're in sync. And now my opinion of where the performance is at has changed because we are iterating early and often on feedback.
I don't want to lose, though, the idea that feels like that's advice that could apply anytime. I think what we have here that's a little different are people who are very, very focused on a flat hierarchy, at least within their teams, and then having to make that work with the places that may be much more hierarchical, and the ability to show people that they could not just survive in a team structure, but survive with a lot of individuality. So when we're doing this, let's remember that what we want to give people is a sense of the possibilities that make us different too. Can we let Grizz say something?
Oh, I mean, I was really enjoying the conversation. But earlier, you were mentioning something about filtering for weirdness. And the question came up to me, what do you think, and all of you think, is like a good ratio to weirdo to normie? Because like, in some sense, right, if everyone is... Huh?
W over N.
W over N ratio. Because in some sense, right, if everyone is normal, then maybe that becomes an ossified team. But if everyone is weird, maybe that becomes too much chaos.
I don't think you end up with too much chaos. It ends up being about how you communicate within the team. And provided you have the right sort of attitude within the team and the right sort of TL managing that team, I think it can work really well because you've got people with a lot of different ideas bringing those together, and provided the conversation stays collaborative and everyone stays engaged with that, I think that can work really well. But yeah, you work with the team you've got, kind of thing.
I just like to say that I think that everyone has at least a little bit of weird. It just happens to be a different little bit of weird depending on the person. I think we all have pretty different backgrounds. But I think that, at least for the people that I know up here and I've had a chance to talk to, I think we would probably all work quite well together. But I don't know.
I think it's, as a manager, your job is team building. That's your job description, right? If you're a team lead. And that's what team building means. Is taking all these rough edges and all these different vectors and kind of making them work towards the same goal together and with each other in a certain way, while maintaining their interesting points of view. That's your job, right?
Well, it's not my job, but yes.
One's job.
So I was just going to say, there are certainly people who, when added to a team, will disrupt that team, will not work well in that team. I don't think that's a particularly, I'm kind of not particularly happy we've come up with like normal versus weird, but I don't think it's particular I think like a disruptive element in a team is not to do with weirdness necessarily. It's mainly about communication. Not everybody's going to fit everywhere. But yeah, it's about having like a cohesive set of people who work together in the environment in which they're expected to work. I can imagine that. So I work particularly well with asynchronous communication. I only work well in like synchronous situations, like meetings, if I've had the material in advance and have been able to think about it. I know I'm not great at thinking on my feet, and that's fine. I can imagine a team that I would fit in particularly well where everything was completely asynchronous all the time, but not everybody works well like that. So a kind of like a balance works. But I think a disruptive element in a team is not to do with weirdness necessarily.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And to tie that back to the previous conversation, I think honesty within a team is particularly important, particularly as individuals, so that you are honest with what you want from the team, how you fit into the team, and you can have honest conversations about what's working for you and what's not. As Lara said, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. And very often, if you're honest with your manager about what works for you, there can be accommodations made and things can be worked out, and that can only help the team.
That is really key. By the way, Colin is one of the most amazing mentors on the world. I came to talk to his team about what our team could do for them. And 8 people followed him into the room. And he was definitely their leader, even though he's their teammate. They look up to him because he takes the time to listen and to mentor. And Lara helps people across the company. We ended up across continents and teams and departments collaborating. We gave a talk here last year about our collaboration because we both were thinking about things differently and just started following where that brought us. And it did bring back value to the team. I think one of the things I had to learn was when I was doing something that felt like other, is to actually speak up and say why it was valuable or make sure that the people I was working with thought it was valuable. Because I'm always afraid that I'm going to sort of spin off and without a tether or gravity into the atmosphere. And I may be doing something great, but there needs to be that balance between needing the freedom and making sure that the people who are paying the bills kind of feel like they have a say in it, So yeah, it's never about being disruptive. It's never about being above or not being part of. It's about how do I take this energy and make it work in a way that people still want me around.
I'd like to take the chance to divert the conversation slightly into discussions of self-advocacy. So this is something that I realized relatively late into my career. So the first couple of evaluations I had at Bloomberg were fairly mediocre because I was just kind of doing my work and kind of staying off to the side and trying to stay out of the way. But a couple of years in, I started to speak my mind much more about what I thought needed to be done in order to make the product that I was working on better. And at that point, not only did I get to work on more of the things that I particularly thought needed to be addressed, but my evaluations also got much, much better. So I do feel it's important that the value that you communicate upward, not just what you want to be working on, but also the impact that you think that you're having, because that makes your manager's job a little bit easier because it helps them write about what you're doing to their management and to express the contributions that you're making and the impact that you're having.
You're also particularly good, though, he looks around he is involved in our guilds, which is our communities, and our C++ guild in particular, and he looks around, and when he sees something worth highlighting, he takes a minute to write that letter, to say, if you don't know what this person is contributing, I'm going to take a minute to do that. And I would encourage all of you, especially if you have friends who you respect, who may be less good at advocating for themselves. I find that incredibly touching and valuable for me. It seems to lead me to Enrique, because you've been doing like manager support groups and finding ways to teach people that it's not just about getting the boxes filled in, but about feeding people, like, going to be so corny, but feeding their souls.
Indeed, I started something I call manager group therapy at my company. I am a doctor, so it's okay for me to do that. But the goal was to build a forum where especially more junior managers or managers new to managing larger teams could come together and help each other. I believe there's tremendous value in realizing that you're not the only one facing certain challenges, that other folks are on the same boat. And I purposely try to steer clear of giving solutions to things that come up. I try to get the group to come up with a solution. I try to coach where they have the answer and I'm there to facilitate them getting to the answer.
You were for a bit?
Yes. So I apologize, John, because I want to go back to Tom's thought about tasks versus goals, and I thought that was very interesting because you might find out that you are wrong in the task that you might have wanted to have accomplished. So I guess my question would be, as a manager, how would you step back and not feel challenged, and or as an individual contributor, how would you, do you have any suggestions for how to approach, hey, maybe we can try something different? But
there's a thing I tell my daughters, which is the first step in learning something is not knowing it. So you have to come to the conversation with the understanding, with no answers, with opinions maybe. And then I think that's the hardest part.
I was going to say, we don't always have good days.
Yes, fair enough. But at least in principle, right? You want to come to any conversation with the understanding that, the moment I became a manager, by definition, I am not as technically competent as the people on my team. I do not have the understanding that they have. And so I need to be very aware of that, be very open to listen to that. But I kind of like it when I'm wrong, because it's such a great way to build relationships, to go to someone and say, I was wrong. This is not just career advice, this is life advice, this is marital advice, this is anything advice, right? Just saying I was wrong and you were right and here's why is such a relationship builder. It's such a, it doesn't even hurt the ego so much, because you see the person in front of you, maybe like The Sims, you see the respect meter kind of rise in real time. And it's like anywhere else in life, right? When you bring your ego in, things get bad. But otherwise, yeah, I've been wrong so many times.
I think from the IC side of that, it's kind of a similar thing, coming with suggestions and reasoning and sort of background for it. Don't come in with sort of right and wrong. Don't say this should be this way. I think this would be a better way of doing it because. So if you kind of come in, as I say, with opinions and maybe something to back up your particular opinions, then it makes it an easier conversation rather than kind of saying, yeah, you did that wrong, because it just makes the whole conversation harder.
Lara is a master at this. The multiple ideas is what I'm thinking of, Lara.
Yeah, so, gosh, I have about 3 things that are kind of queued up in my brain. I mean, it kind of comes back to, actually, quite a long time ago, there was a kind of a phrase mentioned of saying what you need to get the response you want. And I think and also kind of like, going together in a common direction. I think you're never going to build a long-term relationship by any form of kind of emotional manipulation. But at the same time, you can't underestimate you can't underestimate the short-term kind of like initial emotional response that people have to like situations and things that you say. So by bringing things to another person, in particular, in my case, my manager, in the best possible light, it kind of makes things. It can kind of like ease, simplify how you kind of like build a relationship going forward. So it's. When I'm an individual contributor and I'm coming with an idea of something I think we should do that's different from what we're doing at the moment, it's my manager's kind of responsibility to challenge that constructively, to push back, to say, to make sure that what I'm suggesting is reasonable, and then seeing if he's agreed. So if I say, I think we should do this, then the natural challenging response is, no, we shouldn't do this, justify it. And that's kind of like, that can feel a bit confrontational. If instead I have this idea, I think we should kind of like, change the way we do this interface, we should construct a whole new thing. If I kind of think about like other things that are kind of like in the space, if I go, we could do this, quick and dirty measure, which is cheaper, but has these drawbacks. If I present it like, we have an issue in this area. We could do this. It would take an amount of effort and the benefits are X, Y, and Z. Or we could do this kind of quick measure, which kind of alleviates some of the problem, but has these drawbacks. I can, not only is the kind of like I've now presented a kind of like, I can see that you thought through these options. And honestly, the way I phrase it, the one that I want to do will be very compelling. And so the manager is kind of like, my manager is making a choice. And sometimes, I'll actually think, the quick solution, it probably does, avoid the most major headaches we've had, and we could have it done quickly. So I really want to do this, but I'm going to understand if my manager chooses the other. And each situation is different. But by doing that, you can, you're kind of like, you're avoiding the kind of confrontational, no, we shouldn't kind of thing. And you're kind of making a more collaborative choice. So, I'm still kind of like building an understanding and going in a common direction. I'm not manipulating my manager, but I am taking the opportunity to construct a conversation which is going to be much more constructive. If that makes sense?
John actually coached me just this morning, and I was trying to work out a quandary. And he said, well, it's not about the problem. It's about you want to do something wonderful next. So skip to that part. They're both true. But how you present something, as long as it's honest, it does maybe matter. I was actually talking to the ombudsman here, and some people have gone in to be counseled because you're afraid of the market. And she said, the minute you talk about fear, your whole body starts to react in fight or flight. Maybe think about what's the most positive thing that I really want to do. And you focus on that, and your manager focuses on that, and it's not authentic, but it may be more effective.
I want to kind of build on what Laura said. There's like the words emotional manipulation. We kind of heard several times here, and I just want to make the point: empathy is not emotional manipulation. Seeing things from the point of view of someone else and understanding how they see the world and how they hear what you are saying, that's not emotional manipulation. And kind of the more I am, the longer I am in this business, the more I see the importance of empathy and how much we don't kind of talk about it enough as a professional career skill. And I wish we did, because it's not about manipulation. It's about human connection.
I think I interviewed everybody ahead of time, and the conversations I've had with all these people, it really was about how do you find out what would make somebody happy? Not just what they're good at, but what would make them happy? And how can you advocate for people? And also the people you're advocating for, you have to understand where they're coming from so you get heard. It is a lot about empathy and we started with the idea of collaboration, like beyond levels, beyond hierarchy. It's only a true collaboration if you're all hearing each other and giving each other a respect that has nothing to do with titles.
So the two questions that I find most useful to ask an engineer that's joining my team, and to periodically ask them again, because sometimes the answers change, are what does opportunity look like to you, and what does success look like to you? They're hard questions to answer, so you usually have to warn someone beforehand that you're going to ask them. But if you're able to get an answer, it really helps inform not just how you can support that person and make sure they get the opportunities that they want, but also to support them in the success that they're striving for. But you also have to re-ask every couple of months.
I want to give you a chance.
Thank you. Let's see. I wanted to first say thanks. This is a fantastic event session. This is great.
Thank you.
I wanted to share one of the best managers I had. Maybe my favorite manager was one that listened the best, and I felt on that team as though the manager was like a gardener, curious what we were going to grow into. And I trusted that manager very much. It was the listening was just fantastic. I have a question, but I wanted to say something too about, I hate the word manipulation, but if you go into a conversation with a smile, everybody knows what a smile means. Sure, you're setting a nice tone at the beginning of the conversation, but that's not manipulative. That's letting people know that you want to have a nice conversation.
That's a little bit what Colleen was talking about, the ombudsman. You know, trying to put yourself in a mood that makes you the people around you open to the conversation too.
All right. So then, my question is that in times in my career when I was having the most difficulty, were times when some of my teammates might have described me as like Chicken Little running around saying the sky is falling.
Floor is lava.
Yeah, I would find a problem, and there was some truth in what I found. I wasn't right about everything, but it was a problem that no one else saw, or that I thought no one else saw. And it seemed to me that whenever I tried to explain to people what the problem was and why we needed to do something about it, that every blank stare and every challenging question felt like it was isolating me instead of just being a regular conversation between colleagues.
Joshua, did you find a way to make it work? Because it feels almost like there's another part of this that you worked out something.
Well, I'm asking because I feel like I haven't learned everything that I could learn from that experience. And I think that there are others here who could.
I think it's important to be assertive, in your career and to bring things up like that. And it's also equally, if not more important, to be radically open-minded and listen to people. And you're only going to be part of that conversation. The people that you're talking to and the rest of your team, they need those same kinds of principles too in order to have those conversations and to really get in sync on things. I'd be interested to hear how things turned out for you and what you did about it. But there are some things that we can do on our own. There's some things we can do in interactions with our leadership or our subordinates, and there's some things that are cultural. And it's not the same in every company, of course. And so you kind of have to figure out how to have those conversations within the culture that you're living in order to be effective at it.
Can somebody give a little bit more concrete advice? Where do you start?
I faced very similar challenges because for me, it's difficult when you care about something more than the people around you. a good place to start for me, once you identify that this is a pattern, there's something that happens with, with a certain group of people, is find someone there you trust, which is, hopefully your manager, and just flat out describe the situation and say how it makes you feel, and ask for their feedback. It's what they're supposed to be doing, right? That's personal development. And just have that conversation. Look, there are these things here that I think are really, really important. And whenever I try to bring someone's attention to them, I'm getting these blank stares. What can I do differently? What does it look like from your end when I come with something, with an issue? And it's, you need to be able to even talk about like that one time that I came to you as my manager with the thing, and I felt you did not really care about it. You didn't do anything about it. Why? What in the way that I described it made you not think that it was as important as I thought it was?
But even before you ask the question, ask yourself the question. I had a situation like that with a new manager where in our first half hour face-to-face, I tried a little too hard to make my point. And I thought about that, and I got up early in the morning because I knew he came in earlier than everybody else, and looked at him and said, I don't disagree with the points I made, but I think that was a bad way to spend our first half hour together. I really want to hear what you have to say. I'm sorry I did that. Can we have a different conversation? And he was so relieved. I think we both knew it didn't go well, and neither one of us wanted that to happen. So I think you can ask, but you could also think about asking yourself the question, could I have done better? And not kicking yourself, not disagreeing with yourself, not saying I was wrong, unless you were wrong, but just then saying, I'd like to redo that. I've had a minute to think about it. I have found to be really helpful when I've learned to understand my own foibles. I don't know. Here.
Okay, so I think the second time that you realize that the sky is falling in, it's kind of like a prompt to go, so what happened the first time that I warned that the sky was falling in, and to try and kind of like preempt some of the conversation. So I think, so I don't know what your example is, but I can think of examples in my career where maybe in the past I've kind of gone, and I'm looking at this piece of code and I'm thinking, oh my word, this is so dangerous. This is clearly unchecked, dereferenced, could be pointing to anything. Instant crash based on user input. Wow, it's bad. But like objectively, I've got at this point, I've got a very small focus window. I'm looking at this small piece of code, and it feels important to me because I know this code is running in production. The counterpoint is, well, this code is running in production. If it's crashing all the time, yes, the sky would definitely be falling in, but it's not. Actually, by coming to your team with a little bit less, almost to make your point strongly, you make it kind of weaker first. So you say, I think, I was looking at this and it doesn't seem good. Now, obviously, we're not kind of like having a huge amounts of crash, but this thing looks wrong. I wonder, I think we should try and fix it. And also kind of gather more evidence. It's kind of like, well, maybe there's some code that you don't, because this is kind of like inner workings, maybe there's some outer workings that mean that actually the things are checked kind of further out. So the thing that looks unchecked, it can't actually really be happened, or it can only happen under really rare circumstances. Maybe you find the external input that will cause it, and then that's kind of more compelling. But if you're kind of like a bit weaker, it's kind of like, yeah, this is quite serious. Obviously, it's not kind of affecting us now, but I think, I think we should treat it with X, Y, Z urgency, rather than kind of tearing in, we got to fix this now. It's appalling. It's dire, because clearly nobody else has spotted this. So everybody else does have a different opinion. So coming in, like acknowledging the consensus position, which is like, nobody knows this is an issue. So yeah, acknowledging that I think is kind of important. There's a hand, so I don't know if you want to.
I was just going to say, I was going to say something very similar, which is it's worth trying to take the time to figure out why your perspective on that code is different from everyone else's on the team, which is kind of what Lara was just alluding to. Because obviously everyone else has been working there, everyone else possibly knows that code's there, but it's obviously not causing that much of a problem if it's been there. But yeah, you spotted something, bring it up, but try and understand why your perspective on it is different from the rest of the teams.
All right.
I would like to offer a slightly different perspective. I think they've covered beautifully what to do when you see that problem, but I think it may be useful for folks to hear what I've done when someone is acting like Chicken Little. And it is, first of all, validate their feelings. They've seen something. Okay, I understand you're upset. I understand you're very worried about this. Let's work together to understand what the true impact could be. And also, please come up with a plan for how we can start fixing this in alignment with the other things we need to do. So yes, I agree. You are right. This is a problem. You are correct. I have no argument for defending it. I cannot stop the world and only fix this right now, perhaps based on the impact. The sky is not falling. And I've had success with that, with working with people to empower them. So, okay, how do we fix it? How in alignment with everything else we have to do?
I think on the concrete advice front, the keyword you want to be going is change agent. You want to learn how to become a better change agent. And there's research around it, and there's a bunch of, you can read a whole bunch about it. There's a typically incredible talk by Kate Gregory about driving changes that I think should go on YouTube soon from CPP North. That's kind of the theoretical basis you want to have. And it's theory, you would still need to apply it to your actual reality. But that's what we do, right? We're engineers. We apply theory to practice. So I would try to read up on that.
Thank you.
I can't see your name because your badge is turned around.
I want to be anonymous.
Go for it.
Yes. I want to give you a bit of insight from the engineer perspective, because I hear stories from managers and how they want to see it. And I thought maybe I should give some insight in return. And I want to give, before I get to my point, give 2 examples. I want to go back to the point where you told us, well, let's be honest, against managers it works best for both ways. And I want to give 2 examples how that didn't work best for the engineer. And one of them was an colleague of mine. He was approaching a burnout. And he told that to his manager. And his manager is actually very friendly. He has the same hobbies as us. It's almost like our buddy. So he totally trusted him. And he told him, well, I'm approaching burnout. It's not going very well. Such stuff like that. So he got some free time to recover. But in the end, what was surprising was that everybody, they get a yearly raise. That's like normal in our company, except him. So if he hadn't told him that, then he could have gotten a raise as well. And now maybe that's one part of it, he's no longer working there. And I also imagine that next time he may think twice before saying that he approaches a burnout. So that's example 1. And example 2 is actually a more extreme case from a previous company I worked at. And that was somebody that got bullied. And he told him to the manager, yeah, I'm getting bullied by this person, that person. And for 2 weeks, I didn't hear anything about it anymore. And after 2 weeks, he was fired. He was just gone without how we call it, without letting anybody know about it. It was just sent out of the door. So I can imagine some people being reluctant telling the truth to their managers. And that's the insight I want to give you there.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah. They say people don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Yeah.
Not all managers are good.
No, but the first example I gave you, that was a manager that we really had trust in him. Like, it was our friend and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And by not giving him a raise, but everybody else give him, it gives a small smell, I guess, of not really saying anything to anybody anymore, any higher up.
Yeah,
so,
look, if you're not building trust, what are you even doing there as a manager?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is the opposite of building trust. So I stand by what I said. Some managers are bad. And
but they don't
should,
seem
they
bad.
should feel better.
They just hide it somewhere. It feels like that. So even for me, it's like they can be all friendly and I can have good connection with them. And often I feel like that as well. Like I can tell them everything. Right? Because of that example, I still do feel that there's a part of his brain somewhere he's guarding very, very well, and it only comes to light when it's really needed.
One of the managers at Bloomberg I love best, and nothing this extreme, but it's your manager, it's Piotr, and he said that he learned to listen in a certain way, learned to give freedom in a certain way, learned to balance and help people who need freedom to also bring value, because he had tried to overmanage early in his career and lost good people. And I'm sorry that happened to your friend. And you don't know if that manager learned something from it. Some people do, and some people are just consistent the rest of their lives. But I would encourage people who feel like they got it wrong to think about what happened and try to figure out what you can do better. But it's hard, and sometimes situations just suck.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think obviously there's when we say kind of like you can be honest with your manager, you don't have to be honest about everything, and I think there's always there is a balance, and sometimes you're kind of playing politics and playing the systems, and I think one of the most the best times of my career is when I kind of like moved to join a manager who is a good manager, and I think that's just so important. You have two examples there. One is which you kind of have to look at that. Like sometimes you kind of like look at the cost benefit, and it's kind of like if I don't tell my manager that I am close to burning out.
Sherry.
We have 10 minutes.
Right, so, oh gosh, that sounds louder. So sometimes you're, so you gave two examples, and kind of one is kind of like, do I tell my manager that I feel I'm close to burning out? And I wouldn't, it sounds like, so the alternative, like not telling your manager, and then you do actually burn out, and maybe you just don't turn up to work, and you get sacked because you didn't turn out to work, and nobody turns out why. It takes you months to recover. Maybe you never find a job again, and that's really bad. Your manager kind of like not giving you a raise because you took some unplanned time off in order to not burn out. That's telling you a signal. But maybe the situation isn't quite as bad, and maybe the result is like, okay, the manager isn't as empathetic as I thought.
I agree to that.
Yeah,
but it does give you a sense of not telling it the second time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's telling the truth basically the second time.
And the other one sounded like a retaliatory firing, and it's kind of like, some workplaces suck.
Yeah.
And I think that's the conclusion.
Yeah. I agree with Lara, and as she was speaking, I remembered the problem of optimal stopping, where the optimal strategy is unsuccessful most of the time. So the choices were bad, but at least in one of them, you didn't know beforehand that the choice was going to be a bad one. All you knew is, well, you either burn out or you continue being harassed.
Yeah.
Both are really bad, possibly worse than what ended up happening.
I don't want to rush, but we do have less than 10 minutes now, and I want to get to a couple more people. I hope that helped, by the way. Hi, Tyler.
Hello. So there's been a lot of conversation about navigating relationships in hierarchical organizations, but what experience do you guys have in building consensus and working in organizations that are intentionally non-hierarchical?
We're blessed at Bloomberg that that's frequently true. There is some hierarchy, but it's fairly flat. But there is more ambiguity, because you don't have layers and levels and titles. And and a large part of what has to happen is you have to arm your manager. I have to arm my manager, my TL, with enough information about what I'm working on and what I care about so that he has the power to advocate for me. And it helps that when you work for somebody that you trust that could do that for you, because it is about information, and it is because you are trying, or even better, when I was in the position when I first got to Bloomberg and I was implementing John Lakos's naming conventions for C++ and libraries and things like that, I actually was standing toe to toe with Sergey, who was the head of trading systems at the time. And I said to him just 3 months ago, you could have squashed me like a bug. Not only were you in charge of everything, but I knew nothing. But instead, you debated with me and discussed it with me as an equal. And it gave me so much confidence that I am still here 19 years later. And he kind of teared up and he said, I'm so glad you told me that, because it's something I've always wanted to do. I wanted to make sure I treated people beyond hierarchy. And I was too stupid to even know what a gift it was when he did it. It took me almost 20 years to thank him. I think you find the people who will listen to you, and it's not going to be everybody. Yeah.
So one of the things that really helps in hierarchical organizations is to build connections and to build your own network. So it's very different to come into a meeting and say, hey, I have an idea, versus, hey, I have an idea, and I think that you can get the following people to help with it, or I've already even talked to these people. So if you are in a flat environment and you, a very easy thing to do is to work on growing your network, find additional technical connections.
Oh, that's good advice.
It's kind of boring but true, or at least it's oft repeated. So I mean, there's hierarchy at Bloomberg because like you have to have some hierarchy to organize a large organization, but there's a kind of like a kind of, it feels like a high percentage of kind of like fairly long tenured individual contributors who command respect in various parts of the organization. Your network doesn't have to be kind of like, it doesn't have to be people that you've directly worked with or been friends with, but just having some, and even like, if you're kind of quite new, ask the people you know, hey, do you know somebody who works in this area, or do you have a contact in this team, in this group? And do multiple steps at a time. And sometimes you kind of like, you can write an introductory kind of email. Hey, I got your name from so-and-so. I'm trying to do this. Is there somebody in your area who I should be talking to? So, because build your network is great advice, but when you're new in a flat organization, it's kind of like, how do I do that? But if you have something to do, reach out to your contacts and say, do you have contacts as well?
I was just going to say, the other thing that I noticed joining Bloomberg from joining some very hierarchical organizations is you need to start coming in to everything with an idea. You put your ego at the door. This is just an idea. I'm presenting something. You can't go in as sort of, if you've got a hierarchy there, people will walk into them and say, this is what I've decided. This is what you guys are doing. This is the way it's going to be. In a flat organization, you can't get away with that. You've got to come in with, this is an idea. These people think it might work. Let's have a debate. Let's have a discussion about it.
You could also borrow authority. Lara and I are both ICs, but Lara is the expert in our messaging system and our vast messaging system and the user interface for that. And I had a ton of questions all the time. And at a certain point, I got to say, I've discussed this with Lara, but I was also willing to say, I've got to get back and find out. I got away with a ton because I did my homework, I knew what I didn't know, and I found a willing teacher. So I was able to get a lot further. I was able to amplify Lara, and I was able to amplify my own impact by using her authority. And we're both ICs, but again, everybody knew she's the unquestioned expert. And it was kind of neat.
I guess I just wanted to clarify. I'm not looking for how to find non-hierarchical relationships within a hierarchy, but how to build non-hierarchical organizations and specifically how to navigate relationships in those organizations. Like, not look for collaborations within an organization.
We have 1 minute, so I think there's a book you were going to recommend, right, Tom? Yes, we have a minute. It's got to be fast.
I want to say that when you study leadership, one of the things you learn is formal authority is just one tool in the toolbox. And there are many other forms of leadership. There are many other tools that you can use to apply leadership to a situation. And so even in a non-hierarchical organization, leadership is still a thing. And it can come from many different, what they call bases of power. Find those tools that still apply in this context and use them.
I want to say that this discussion was what led to the business and careers track. I was talking to John Kalb about trying to do this, and he said there would need to be a place for it. And later he made this possible. Is this the kind of thing that you guys would like to see again next year? Would you like more of this? Well, we would love to do it for you more. And I think you could find any of us out of the room so we don't prevent the next guy from setting up. But we all love to talk about this stuff. And I am really delighted and grateful to see that so many of you came. It was a proof of concept for me. And my job, since I have been working with these people on panels in various incarnations, different groups, has gotten so much better because I keep learning. And I think I'm 65 years old and I'm still learning how to do it. So I'd like to think that it's possible for all of us. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you guys for coming from all over the place to be here.